Hey, my name is Dirty Garden Tool, also known as DGT, and today I'm here to talk to you about Silent Hill F, aka Silent Hill Feminism. Mind you, I've only beat the game once and then watched the other endings. I plan on going through those for extra context, but it would take way too long for me to get this video out in a reasonable amount of time. So, once again, I may be missing some context in terms of documents and cutscenes, but there's a lot to go over, so let's jump into it. This game approaches sexism from multiple facets, not only looking at patriarchal figures like her father, the fox mask, and the monsters that inhabit the game, but also how toxic some women can perpetuate this sexist culture can be, whether it's loyalty to your oppressors or abusers, such as your mother, or the jealous rage of Rinko, even Junko, her older sister. However, possibly the most important piece we'll touch on later is the internal struggle of Hinako. First, let's look at Hinako's family and friends. As it relates to her family, Hinako's father is an abusive alcoholic, something that probably came about due to the stress of him losing his income and passion, which is not me excusing his actions at all, rather stating where it may come from. However, one thing I picked up on early and turned out to be correct about is that those floral masses with giant knives were a representation of her father, how they're made of pure rage, and later on it is revealed that Hinako associates a large knife with her father's abuse, due to the one time that he threw a knife at her. This is confirmed in the boss fight with her parents. Speaking of the boss fight, her mother is also there, shown as a spineless creature, a representation of how Hinako views her mother, for someone who used to defend her from her father's abuse to someone who enables it and makes excuses for him. She also notes that there is no way that her mother can call this happiness. Before moving on, I want to point out that there is an enemy similar to the floral knife monsters that attach strings to feminine monsters, giving them commands, described as constantly banging and making loud noises. No doubt this is also a connection to her parents' relationship. Moving on to her sister Junko, she was always seen as someone who was always there for her until she got married. It is later on revealed that Junko has cracked to societal expectations and says that it is the quickest path to happiness. However, she seems off, and that is because she is no longer truly herself. Her face replaced with a mask, and her tone has been completely drained. Junko does heavily suggest that Hinako should choose the quickest path, aka marriage, but Hinako doesn't want to accept it. She wants to find happiness on her own. I do feel like in the end of the day that Junko will support her, but she urges her to choose sooner rather than later, whereas Hinako wants to take her time and make sure of the decision that she makes for herself. Now on to one of the more controversial characters that take up a rather large portion of the game, surprisingly. Rinko, otherwise known as not a girl's girl. She is someone with largely complex emotions that are greatly exaggerated by Silent Hill. The game makes her come across as someone who is extremely jealous. This is represented not only by the notes, but the scarecrow puzzle as well as her boss fight. It shows the disgust towards Hinako that she hides because Shu only pays attention to Hinako rather than her. However, what is probably understated but shown in the boss fight is that Rinko seems to be upset that Hinako is leaving them behind to go get married, and that is how you're truly hurting Shu, someone she truly cares deeply for. One more thing that's important than mentioned at the end of the fight is that Rinko finally managed to vent her frustrations, something Hinako points out that Rinko was incapable of doing, such as the documents of the origami foxes. Ironically enough, the document mentions that Rinko was supposed to burn them away, but instead of doing so, she would just throw them away, allowing them to linger. Outside of that, however, Rinko does see herself above Hinako in some sense, due to the fact that she tries to fulfill the gender roles in comparison to Hinako, and that she is being fake because she doesn't follow the stereotypical norms. However, this does leave Rinko largely unhappy. Hinako mentions in the boss fight that her dissatisfaction is brought on by her own doing. that if Rinko wants to be happy, that she must take the steps necessary on her own to find it herself. She is also a victim to this sexist, gender role-based society. Moving on to Sakuko, there's not much else to say besides this precious character didn't deserve anything that she goes through. She's literally just an autistic girl whose first friend is Hinako. There's a chance that Sakuko is meant to represent those who are left behind in society due to their inability to fit into social norms, which is why she begs Hinako not to leave her behind by going off and marrying Foxmask. Maybe more playthroughs will reveal more information about her, but until then, this is all I have on her. Moving on to Shu, he is an odd character. At first, he seems like a really good guy, TM, who's there for you no matter what. You know, unless you're roaming the city or in a boss fight or anything really, but you know, he's your childhood friend. One that Hinako has mixed emotions about. Now, for the most part, she doesn't seem interested in Shu, but there's a moment where Hinako confronts herself and she lets slip that she's confused and frustrated that Shu doesn't treat her or see her as a woman, although the other portion of her still respects and loves Shu as a friend as well, and finds that that relationship is special and holds value. She also appreciates the part of Shu that doesn't just treat her the way that society would expect them to. Outside of that, however, it seems like he is someone that does truly care about Hinako, someone who respects her pursuit in self-actualization and individuality, at least to some extent. You see, there is an ending that we'll go over that does reveal that he has his own intentions as well, and it kind of taints my perspective of him, even though his heart is in the right place. So he serves a similar role to Junko, where they force you to address these two halves of yourselves. However, Shu is the one that wants you to pick individuality, though partly because he has feelings for you as well. Before talking about Hinako and the endings, I do want to talk about the monsters in this game. We already spoke about the floral masses with knives being representative of her father, but there are other creatures that bear a lot of meaning as well. There's the kashimashi, which are the dolls that move erratically, who are typically nude, described as being covered in sickening wounds. Hinako wonders if they wish to inflict the same wounds that they have suffered onto her. To me, this monster represents the women who perpetuate these gender roles and expectations, a cycle of how the system has hurt them, so they expect the others to follow as well. There is the Ayakashi, which is the scarecrow-like monsters, which share association with Rinko due to their deceptive nature and unwillingness to show their true faces. Then there's the dog-like monster, whose grab really disturbs me. It's meant to represent cat-calling men, I suppose, who get way too touchy. There's the monster with many faces, described as someone Hinako is unfamiliar with, however they supposedly know her, spouting repulsive things one after another. I see this thing as a representation of rumors and how it reaches people you may have never interacted with in your life, but they will assume to know you based off of them. There's also the spawning monster, a clear representation of motherhood, or rather how a woman's purpose in society may just be to have kids. Hinako makes it extremely clear that this is not something that she wants to become, also noting that this is a mockery of birth, that it should have a purpose instead of just spawning things just for the sake of it. The last monster I will speak about will be the shackled monster with no face. How it seems to focus on listening to sound. I could see this as a representation of Shu, someone who always tries to hear her out while also lacking the courage to face her when it comes to his feelings, but I could be reaching here. Anyway, on to Hinako. This whole game is essentially rooted in her struggle between two choices, either committing to societal expectations / gender roles or self-actualization. This is shown in her journal entries, where she says that there are two parts of her as she knows it. Shimizu Hinako, the person she's always been, and Hinako, a woman trying to take over her body, something akin to an alien. One thing that happens subtly in the background of the first run is how Hinako is essentially sold off to an arranged marriage, something she is definitely against, especially because she makes it extremely clear in her notes that she hates being told what to do, that she'd rather get things wrong and find her own path to things that she wants, rather than being forced to do anything, even if it is the right thing. Another thing that's extremely important is that she takes the time to think about these things carefully and isn't forced to choose so quickly, which is why Junko and Shu pushing her to choose and confront herself is a negative thing. She's still a young girl after all, and just barely understanding herself, so how can she make such a big decision so quickly? I will say, she sees marriage in a very negative light. This is shown in the rituals that take place throughout the game, and even a few of the final bosses. The ritual consists of killing off your friends, a metaphor for how once Hinako becomes married, that her and her friends will become strangers, and that she feels like she must cut off the ties she has with those she holds close. This includes her parents as well, which is why the fog monster, later revealed to be Hinako's manifestation of herself as a bride, crushing her parents' head, something that is foreshadowed in the notes. This shows her resentment towards her parents as well for being forced into this wedding. Focusing a bit more on Hinako's monster's form, it wears a traditional wedding gown and lacks a face, showing how it will erase who she is as a person. It also has a bestial fox arm, which relates back to the ritual that symbolizes wedding ceremonies. Something that is seen as beautiful by others from her perspective is savage and literally tearing away at her and who she is as a person. The fox arm is meant to represent how the fox mask guy is taking her arm in marriage, literally. The branding of her back is showing that she is now his property, as she was traded away to the fox mask guy for money. Lastly, she becomes someone she doesn't even recognize anymore, with half of her face being flayed off and replaced with a fox mask. One thing that also bothers her is how Fox Mask doesn't even realize what she's going through internally, shown in the mural puzzle, which actually has different solutions and hints depending on the ending that you're going for. On the first run, the hint given is the black bird wishes to take the white bird wishes to resist. The fox brings along his followers in triumph. He notices not the two birds in conflict, essentially showing how the black bird is the side of her that wants to get married and embrace tradition and gender roles, while the white one is the one that wishes to be free and spread her wings, all while the fox mask is unaware. I want to note that if you choose Lost in the Fog difficulty for puzzles and follow the true ending, the hint given is two chicks confide in one another in their shells. A fox watches over them in the light of his lantern. Nobody knows when or even if the eggs will hatch, not even the chicks themselves. This is pretty straightforward, telling you that the best outcome for Hinako is to consider both options to herself and take the time necessary to come to a conclusion, even if one is truly never reached. Now, on to the endings. To start, the first ending you'll get is the negative result of what Junko tells you, that you must decide early in life to either kill your identity or your femininity. Hinako was incapable of choosing one over the other, which drives her mad, going around in a wedding dress and killing people. The game shows you that you are incapable of making a decision because when she runs out of the shrine, she yells, "Leave us alone," with both her and the monstrous wife version of her in frame. There's also a possibility that she went crazy on the day of her wedding and killed everyone there. Another thing to note is that this is the only ending you can get if you take a red capsule, Shu's medicine, in which he reveals later on in one of the endings that it is meant to force you to confront yourself, or rather her feminine/wanting to get married side. So consider this the ending of cracking under the pressure when being forced to choose between self-actualization and fulfilling your role in society as a woman. There is another ending in which her feminine side wins over, and it seems happy at first, with her, Shu, and Fox Mask getting along, although in their conversation they treat her like an object, something she is quick to point out. Foxmask claims that she is his, while Shu rejects that notion, saying that she is his partner, which is funny because there isn't really an ending where she picks him over Foxmask, but yeah. Either way, this ending seems happy until we reach the end, where it reveals that she meets a fate similar to Junko, losing her sense of self and her face found on the ground, crying that she does not wish to be like her mother. So this is considered the path of her losing her self-actualization to meet societal expectations.
I'm scared. I'm so scared. Please don't. No, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to become my mother.
There is one ending that seems happy, however ends ominously, in which her true self, quote unquote, wins over and beats the feminine, or rather the societal expectation side of her. She runs off with Shu, joking and teasing each other. However, it flashes to a scene of a radio announcing that geysers have been continuously spewing hydrogen sulfide gas and that the residents of Ebisugoka should evacuate, all while the doll / the representation of Hinako's younger or true self sits alongside it. I'll be extremely clear, I'm not entirely sure what this ending means. My only guess is that this ending is a representation of the negative effects completely abandoning tradition can have on society. One thing to take note in this ending is that Shu recognizes Foxmask as someone that they've played before with in the park. So he isn't just an inhabitant of this other realm, he is another person. This is possibly my favorite ending. In the true ending, Hinako realizes that she's being pitted against herself by societal expectations, and that she doesn't have to choose between self-actualization and the want to be loved nor married, and fulfill societal expectations. In this ending, it is also revealed that the Foxmask is Kotoyuki, another victim to societal expectations, because once she came to existence, a quote-unquote spell was cast upon him, forcing him to seek her out and to love her. Not only that, but you also find notes about him in the town, where his strict mother tells him that he has so many expectations to fulfill, so in a sense, he's a reflection of Hinako, though by the time that you meet him, he is fully committed to the societal expectations. Back to the ending, however. Kotoyuki then embraces both versions of Hinako, showing that he finally accepts all sides of her and understands her truly. They end up deciding that they want to take their time to see if that their love is true or something that is simply being forced upon them. Hinako also wants to spread her wings and live a life of her own before settling down, rather than trying to obtain meaning through marriage, something she knows she can't obtain true happiness from. And even though she doesn't know what will bring her that happiness, the reality is that her finding it on her own is more important than anything else. One possibility I want to point out is that Silent Hill F is taking place when Hinako is actually in her 20s, but in the game is going back to a time where she first started feeling these two sides tugging at her. This makes a bit more sense when other characters are referring to her big day and why Shu is giving her pills before the game has even started, the ones that he gave her specifically because he didn't want her to get married. Although this technically saves her from a marriage that she isn't ready for, it was also without her knowledge nor consent. So I see Shu as someone who's selfishly trying to help her to some extent, and is a lot more of a gray character than one that is strictly good or bad. If this is the case, Rinko's rage more so becomes about the fact that you are hurting Shu by not confronting your feelings for him sooner, which is why he feels like he got left, hanging. And I hope this is true, because none of these characters, aside from her father, I think should personally vanish or perish. Especially Sakuko. That poor girl, I swear. There are other options where either some of the stuff is more so metaphorical or all of it is true. Supernatural powers, gods, and her being sold off as a teenager for a wedding that she doesn't even want to be a part of, which would make this story a lot more grim and sad, which I hope isn't the case, so I will simply look at this game as a metaphor for me to cope. But this has been my interpretation of Silent Hill F's themes and meanings. I know for other people they may see things differently from I, whether it's missing context from characters written on the wall, the cutscenes I haven't seen, cultural references that I definitely have missed. I mean, there's been people pointing out that the way Hinako speaks Japanese is boyish, which is something I clearly would never have picked up on. But either way, I highly, highly, highly recommend this game. It is amazing in the sense of its storytelling. After seeing so many bad faith interpretations online on what Silent Hill F means, I think it's a good idea that I sum up the meaning here. This game is clearly a feminist game. Now, people may misinterpret feminist as being a bad thing, how it's misandrist and toxic or degenerative to society for stripping away social norms, but it's not. It's simply a lens to look at society through. So while other people may look at this game as anti-marriage, natalism, and misandrist, they are robbing themselves of the good faith argument that this game brings forward. One that I would think most people could agree with, which is society can and often will leave people feeling alienated. This game is not saying to not get married nor have children. It's more so saying that being forced to become wedded is a bad thing, and that relationship status is not the only determining factor nor the only path to happiness. There is other options or approaches to life, and this applies to men as well, which is why Kotoyuki is in fact a victim to societal norms, having his path for his life essentially predetermined and carved out for him by the moment he has been birthed. This game quite literally says Hinako and women shouldn't be forced to destroy their wants to seek relationships, and that it is a valid path when it's not forced upon you. This game is very much about the pursuit of happiness and how important the freedom of pursuing it your own way is. Thank you everyone who dropped by and watched this video. This has probably been my favorite video game in a while, at least narrative-wise. Hopefully in the future I can continue to do video game introspections because this one has been a blast. In terms of my next video, I will probably cover Possessor, a movie that I think is great and has a lot of sub-themes. Outside of that though, thank you again for everyone who dropped by, watched this video. I have a Discord community. I do stream semi-often. I'm probably going to stream more often, especially as I plan to cover Dead Space soon. But yeah. I hope everyone takes it easy and has a good day. Goodbye.